Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Sustainability Infrastructure Commission's first regular meeting for the new year. I now call the meeting to order, and please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so before we start roll call, Cliff Robbins has been excused. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Riddlemeyer.
Here.
Vice Chair Narita.
Here.
Chair Rowinski.
Here.
Commissioner Michael.
Here.
And Commissioner Robbins is absent and excused.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we are excited to be here in person and also offer options for the public to participate, that is virtually. For those attending in person, please complete a request to speak slip found in the front of the room and hand it to our clerk. Madam Clerk, can you just hold up the yellow slips? Yeah, so folks know to, if they're here and would like to speak, that's the slip to look for. One can also participate virtually, of which there are two ways. First is to click on the Zoom link found at the top of tonight's agenda. Use the raise your hand feature and you'll be called upon at the appropriate time. And when called upon, let us know who you are and please provide your comments to the commission. The other way to participate virtually is by phone. That is calling area code 408-638-0968, 408-638-0968, and enter the conference ID number 8929334133, the number 5, once again 8929334133, the number 5, and enter the passcode 148133, 148133, and then press the pound sign. Press star 9 to raise your hand, and when called upon, press star 6 to unmute yourself, and once again introduce who you are and provide your comments to the commission. We welcome speakers providing public comment, but please be aware or advised that this is a limited public forum. And what that means is speakers need to speak to a particular item included on tonight's agenda. There are 2 items on tonight's agenda: an update on the bicycle and pedestrian projects and sustainability communities grant program. And the other item on tonight's agenda is the Hillsdale Caltrain station bicycle access gap project. Is speaking during the public comment agenda item. That is, this is the agenda item where the public can speak on items not on tonight's agenda. However, we request that speakers keep this discussion to items that are within the subject matter of the jurisdiction of the city. So with that, the next item on tonight's agenda is the consent calendar. There is one item to approve, and that is the minutes from the regular commission meeting of December 13th, 2023. Do I have any comments prior to a motion on the minutes? No. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I can make a motion to approve.
Thank you.
Seconded.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please do the roll call vote and announce our results.
Commissioner Riddlemeyer.
Yes.
Vice Chair Narita.
Yes.
Commissioner Rowinski.
Yes.
Commissioner Michael.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay. Thank you. The next item on tonight's agenda is the general public comment session. Once again, this is for persons wishing to comment on items that don't appear on tonight's agenda, but are within the subject matter jurisdiction of the city. State law prevents the commission from acting on any matter not included on tonight's agenda. However, comments under the general public comment section are welcomed, and staff and the commission will take note and may consider them for inclusion into future commission meetings. In addition, commissioners can request staff to follow up on any questions raised by a speaker during the public comment section, provided, once again, that the questions are within the city's subject matter jurisdiction. Madam Clerk, do we have any speakers?
Yeah, looks like there's two.
Okay, and is that in person?
They're both virtual and the group comment.
Okay, so we have two in
Two.
person, and then Ms.
Two online.
Foster.
And there's also Allison McQueen.
Okay. So two in person and two virtual. Okay. Okay, and Irina, we'll start off with you first.
If it's okay, Madam Chair, may I have Susan Foster, who is overseeing, she'd like to open up our presentation.
Okay, all righty. Before we bring on Ms. Foster, who will be speaking on behalf of the No Cell Out Group and small cell installations within the city, we have one other speaker, and that's Allison. Allison, can you hear me? Oh. Okay. Okay, Allison can hear me. All right, we'll let her speak, even though I think it's probably going to be about the bicycle-related matters. Okay, so you'd like to have Ms. Foster begin. Okay, and I think what the agenda will be is there'll be 3 speakers, roughly each 5 minutes. About. Okay. Ms. Foster? Okay. Yep. Hello, Ms. Foster, we can't hear you. Hello? Yep. Hold up, Ms. Foster. We've got some technical difficulties here. We'll restart once we get our audio. Susan, can you hear us? I see, okay. Nope, we can't. Okay, Susan, you can hear, yeah. Yeah, she. Right. Yeah, well, maybe we just go closed caption. Anyway, Susan, we will be doing, you'll have roughly about 5 minutes, Arena, and then there will be a total of 3 speakers. That could be worked? Okay. All right, everyone, let's take a 5-minute break and sort this out.
Yes, I have you here as speaker. Do you want me to mute? I can be your audio.
We have another Zoom speaker that we need to get online.
Okay, well, I don't,
Give her time to see what the.
yeah, they've got a. Okay, yeah. No, no, no. And that timer will be for you, Susan, is roughly 5 minutes, and Allison, 3 minutes.
This is meant to use the same speaker that you were just speaking over, correct? This is meant to use the same speaker that you were speaking over, correct? I think, unfortunately, if I had to guess, this computer is currently not connected to that speaker. This speaker is only giving one option, and it's this option. And I think that means that
First of all, I wanted to introduce myself. I am a fire and utility consultant, and I am also an honorary firefighter with the San Diego Fire Department, an honor I received in 2005. I have worked on ordinance writing for local telecommunications ordinances since 2001. This is not exclusively what I do, but I have participated in the ordinances that this is extremely meaningful work to me, and I do feel I have something to contribute. The 2001 ordinance in San Diego County went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we won. That was the first time that any county or city had created a four-tiered order of preference. So the city can decide, and this stands still in California, the city can decide, the county can decide, this is the preferred because
Okay.
we know we will save lives.
Hi, Susan? Yeah, hi, Irina. Let's see, thank you. Yeah, Irina would like, we appreciate if you can just wrap up in 30 seconds, and then, because we've got Irina who's,
Oh, wait. Can we pause the time so we don't?
yeah, we're fine, yeah.
Hi, this is Susan. I'm on the other line right now.
Sure. Susan, we need to call you back. So if you could hang up your call, the phone on your end, and we'll call you. And when we do reach back out to you and we connect, if you could wrap up in 30 seconds or so.
And hopefully the clock will reset.
Hi, are we connected here?
Yes, you're connected again.
Okay.
I will finish up very quickly. I would say that the most important takeaway from what I heard on December 13th is that I believe Attorney Kramer, but definitely the fire chief, was saying that the fire department will make sure that all applicable, and the word is applicable, fire codes are adhered to. This is the same in Malibu, this is the same throughout California, but what we brought in a fire investigator to look at the engineering designs, and we found flaws in every single small cell that has been built out in Malibu. And so the fire codes in California that are applicable, because not all of them are, telecom has many exemptions, they miss the engineering design, and that's what we do with the fire safety protocol. We require 8 engineering documents that are signed by a telecom engineer, and these documents have to be attached to the application before they can come into Malibu. And I would urge you to look at that very seriously for San Mateo. We have not been sued. None of the cities in which we have done this have been sued. And so that's a very important consideration too. Safety is the cities to regulate. Safety belongs to the county to regulate. You
Sure.
make something safer there. So thank you so much. I appreciate
Thank you, Susan.
the opportunity to talk.
Thank you. Okay, Irina,
The clock will go back a little for me.
yeah, we'll give you 5 minutes.
So thank you so much, commissioners, city staff. Happy New Year. I always find it interesting how in emergencies or critical situations, landlines always come to our rescue, even in 2024. So I'd like to provide an update to the commission and staff since we last convened in December. As you may recall, on December 13th, right before our scheduled appeals, 3 permits were abruptly withdrawn by Crown Castle after they heard from our expert telecommunication attorneys, Ariel Strauss and Andrew Campanelli. We believe Crown Castle did so because they saw that unbiased experts who understand how these permits work and know federal and state law had scrutinized these applications. So Ariel Strauss that same day had submitted additional information that noted that Crown Castle has been submitting essentially the same application for each of the 197 sites that it plans to build. I brought a map here with me today for your visual explanation. Since then, 30 additional applications have been withdrawn by Crown Castle as well. According to our city manager, he found that they were incomplete. We just received some of the details today, and we're still waiting to see what exactly was missing. If Crown Castle had not complied with local code requirements by the date of the appeal, then that should have been a sufficient reason to uphold the appeals and cancel the permits. It should not be an opportunity for Crown Castle to fix things. It seems that the city is unfortunately going out of its way to accommodate and advise Crown Castle and is not respecting due process in this appeal process. We understand that the S&I commissioners are scheduled to receive one-on-one training sessions conducted only by city staff, and that is a real problem because city staff itself is not accurately understanding and presenting all sides of this policy matter. Information and training helps no one. The commissioners deserve fair and balanced training, and therefore must be also trained by the experts that we have provided experts who understand how these permits work and know federal and state law. As Susan just mentioned, none of the cities that have had these protective ordinances done have been sued. We're not trying to circumvent federal or state law. We just want some protections in place because the situation now is completely out of control. There are roughly 200 permits all over the city, primarily in residential zones, in front of bedrooms, nurseries, playgrounds. 200 locations that will have a significant aesthetic impact and create significant nuisances which will ruin the quiet enjoyment of streets in San Mateo. None of these locations are the least intrusive means to address an evidence-based significant gap in wireless telecommunications service, which is the Ninth Circuit standard to establish if there is even a need for such a wireless telecommunications facility. As Kramer also confirmed last time, once these go up, the height can be extended up to 20 additional feet with more equipment added over the next 10 years. The community is understandably upset about this. Our group gets daily phone calls and texts from mothers, doctors, engineers, teachers, union workers, and retired folks who are demanding that the city take action to protect the residential character and quiet enjoyment of streets in our residential neighborhoods. The top telecommunications attorney in the US has already told you that the current wireless ordinance that we have today has fatal gaps. It's an ill-informed misconception that your hands are tied and that nothing can be done. I also want to note that we found out that, Crown Castle and the city apparently meet, I believe, weekly. It almost sounds like a paid consulting service that the city staff provides to Crown Castle. Essentially, every applicant is guided and pre-approved by city staff. So that is definitely a little problematic to us. I don't feel that, we're being included in these discussions. And clearly, since at least 30 plus applications, after our attorney took a look at them and said that they're completely misleading and has missing information, Crown Castle did withdraw them. Had we had the chance to appeal them, we would have won the appeal. So Kramer has also pointed out that the small cell rollout is for wireless broadband, not for wireless phone calls. This is a very important point that I'm trying to make sure that everybody understands. Effective prohibition and federal preemption do not apply to these small cells. The community already has wired broadband internet access to their homes. San Mateo is not a rural area. It is the city's duty to provide the least intrusive means to remedying a proven significant gap in personal telecommunications coverage, which means an inability to place a wireless phone call. No such significant gaps has been established by the applicants. Carmel is the latest California city to have recently updated their ordinance and is now compelling the applicants to show an actual proven gap in coverage for the wireless phone calls. The city requires probative data. It's not accepting computer-generated projections, but demands actual drive test measurements and dropped call records. We must place the burden of proof back onto the applicants where it belongs. We are here tonight not to berate you, but to ask you to please do the job that I know you want to do, that you were appointed for. The community is depending on you. I learned today of a resident in Hillsdale who was fighting to get one of these towers out 50 feet from his bedroom, from his kitchen, and his wife now has brain cancer. So the city's discussing a new ordinance in the spring. That is too late. We need to get an urgency ordinance updated as soon as possible. I thank you today. I ask you to follow Mill Valley's example. They issued a small cell moratorium, then enacted an urgency ordinance, and turned into a permanent ordinance. The planning director can change the design guidelines even today. I believe Brad
Rena,
Underwood.
yeah, I have to, yep.
Do you have 1 minute?
Well, we have another speaker?
If I can have 30 more seconds.
Sure.
Mr. Respectfully, Brad Underwood, I believe you are the director of the Public Works Department. I understand that you do have the authority under the current guidelines today to make changes. You can make the applicant show an actual proof that there's a gap in coverage in personal wireless cell phone service. I will email some information today if you'd like, showing our own design guidelines and standards. The city is really begging you and counting on you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Okay, thank you. Cookie, is there any way to raise the timer? Because it's caught behind the caption. We have, yeah, we're very much over time here. If you want to speak for 30 seconds?
Okay, I'll be super fast.
Yeah.
2 minutes and 50 seconds.
Right.
Oh, wait, 10 seconds? No, 2 minutes. Oh, okay. Thank you.
I'll be fast.
Yeah.
Okay, hi, Kathleen Wells. I've spoken to you before. I just want to point out, we've talked about the flaws in the current code. Under the existing code, there are ways to revoke these permits, not just the existing code, but the master license agreement between the city and Crown Castle, which requires compliance with the current code and very specific insurance coverage. We asked for, I think, for well over a month for proof of insurance coverage. We just got it in the past few days. They're specifically missing the $5 million in pollution coverage that's required. The master license agreement further provides that they can't begin work until they provide proof of coverage. So I just want to note that all the permits that, mine specifically that I appealed and then was withdrawn, had at least 4 areas of non-compliance with the current code that I believe run across the other permits that were issued. So the existing permits, I believe many of them or all of them are invalid under the current code. For the reasons cited in my appeal, they should not stand. So as the commission charged with overseeing this small cell effort, I would ask you to please exert your oversight authority and ask the city to enforce the master license agreement as it's currently written on behalf of residents, so that we don't have to seek to enforce it ourselves as the intended third-party beneficiaries of that contract. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay. We have Allison. Okay, Allison, if you can hear me, Sue Ellen's going to give you a call right now. We're going to put you on a speakerphone here in the chambers. Now, question, Allison, if you're going to be speaking about bicycles, we have 2 agenda items related to bicycles and pedestrian. Would you prefer to speak during them?
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message.
All right. She wants to speak now.
Hello.
Hello, this is Allison.
Hi, Allison. You're on speaker in the council chambers.
Hi, thank you.
Sure. Allison, hi. Allison, hi. Before you begin, are we getting an echo? Yeah. I don't have a speaker. I don't have it. Allison, we will, in today's meeting, we have 2 bicycle-related agenda items. Would you not prefer to speak during those 2 items? Because this section's referred for items that are not on the agenda. What would you prefer to do, to speak now, or? Okay. All righty, go ahead. You have 3 minutes. Okay.
It's a safe option. I have my perspective to share on biking in the city of San Mateo. It's not safe, and we can do better. Although we lag our peers of Foster City and Burlingame in bike infrastructure, we can make the most of what already exists and make sure bike infrastructure is signed and marked with green paint so people know about it and use it. I'll give you one example on the far northern end of San Mateo, but it's illustrative of issues we have throughout the city. There is some space on the Peninsula Avenue 101 overpass between the lane and the sidewalk that I think might be a bike lane, but I'm not sure, and I've driven by there thousands of times. There's no green paint on it, and it looks pretty skinny to me, so I'm not sure. If that is bike infrastructure, let's get some green paint on that overpass. So let's just pretend that Peninsula Overpass indeed is a bike lane, and I take it over the overpass. How do I get onto that beautiful bike lane on Humboldt? How do I navigate the very busy and quite complicated Humboldt and Peninsula intersection? I'll tell you what I would do for biking in this city for 10 to 15 years. What I would do is become a pedestrian with my bike, basically. Pull my bike up onto the sidewalk at the intersection, walk it across Humboldt in the crosswalk, then cross Peninsula in the crosswalk, and then bicycle onto that beautiful green painted bike lane on Humboldt. So I think we just have to get out the green paint on existing bicycle infrastructure and think about navigating intersections as we connect from one road to another. I have one additional thought for the Commission's consideration. I'd love to see the City of San Mateo promote improvements to or new bicycle and pedestrian projects to neighborhoods and our community at large. It's an opportunity for residents to make a change in their habits and start to bike or walk more. I'll give you an example. We have an overpass that links North Shoreview with North Central, but unless you live right near it, how would you know about it? Biking in San Mateo should not be a choose-your-own adventure as it currently exists today. People should be able to plot a safe route from point A to point B with knowledge of the bike and pedestrian infrastructure in their neighborhood and surrounding area. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Allison. Okay. Thank you, Allison. We were able to hear everything you said and appreciate you staying on time. Okay, is there any more speakers virtually in person before we wrap up?
No, no one.
Okay, great. Arena, thank you. Catherine, thank you. Appreciate it, and useful information as always. Okay, everyone. All right, good night. And thank you, Susan Foster, if you're still on. Okay, seeing no further hands raised for speakers, we will conclude the general public comment section and move to the next item on our agenda. It's under what's called old business, and specifically it is an update on the bicycle and pedestrian projects and Sustainability Communities Grant Program. This agenda item will require a commission motion. We'll begin this section with a presentation from Sue Ellen Atkinson, the city's principal transportation planner, and Nikki Chan, associate transportation planner, followed by questions from the commission to Sue Ellen and Nikki. Once we have finished our questions, I will then reach out to the public for comments from them. And once we have gotten all comments from the public, we will bring this discussion back to the commission for any final questions before the motion. The motion is as follows: does the commission approve the chair to sign the January 10th letter to the California Department of Transportation that is found in our meeting, in the meeting agenda? This letter is to accompany the city's grant application that Sue Ellen and Nikki will be discussing tonight. So on that, Sue Ellen and Nikki, please.
Okay, good afternoon, commissioners. I'm Nicolette Chan, Associate Transportation Planner, and with me presenting tonight is Sue Ellen Atkinson, who is our Principal Transportation Planner. And tonight we'll be giving an update on our plans and projects that we work on that include bicycle and pedestrian improvements. An overview of our presentation tonight, we'll begin with infrastructure projects, then move on to planning projects, and end with a grant update. And at the end, we will be requesting the chair to sign a letter of support for a grant application that we are submitting soon. Infrastructure projects. The first project we have here is the Delaware Street Safe Routes to School corridor, where we are designing and constructing a Class 4 separated bike lane and a Class 3 bicycle boulevard on Delaware Street between 19th Avenue to Pacific Boulevard, and this is a grant-funded project. We just awarded the contract for consultant services last month, and we'll be kicking off the project very shortly. the 28th Avenue Gap Closure Project. For this project, we are designing and conducting an environmental review for implementing a bike facility on 28th Avenue between Edison Street and Kine Street, and there are also pedestrian improvements included in this project as well. As you can see on the graphic on the right-hand side of the slide, we are striving to implement the bike facilities proposed in our adopted 2020 Bicycle Master Plan, which include a Class 4 separated bike lane between Edison and El Camino Real, and also a Class 2 bike lane between Delaware and Kine Street. So far, we have developed 3 design alternatives for the bike facility and have held a community meeting back in November at the Hillsdale Branch Library to get feedback from the community on those alternatives, and we'll be presenting the project and the alternative to the commission tonight after this item. Smooth Streets program is where we integrate bicycle and pedestrian improvements with our pavement projects where it's feasible. And here we have 2 planned and done. So phase 3 is where we have completed our pavement project already and completed implementation of the Class 3 bike boulevard on Sunnybrae Boulevard from Delaware Street to South Amphlett Boulevard, and also there's traffic calming elements and pedestrian improvements here as well. And then as part of a separate project, we're going to be restriping the Folkestone Avenue and Sunnybrae Boulevard intersection. But before we do those striping changes, we will be conducting outreach with the neighborhood first. And then there's phase 5B. We have 2 bike facilities that we'll be implementing as part of that project. The first one is on South Grant Street from Concord Drive to 16th Avenue, where we'll be constructing a Class 3 bike boulevard in addition to traffic calming improvements. And then the second one is on Norfolk Street on 2 segments. We already have an existing Class 2 bike lane here, so as part of the paving project, we'll be upgrading those bike lanes to make sure that there's delineation on the left and right side of the bike lanes to separate from the driving lane and then the parking lane. And then we'll also be upgrading the pavement markings to make sure they have the green background for visibility. And this project is currently in design. 4th and 5th Railroad Crossing Improvement. This project is mostly complete. We now have Class 2 bike lanes on 5th Avenue between B Street and Railroad Avenue. The last part of this project is just completing the electrical work, which includes the street lights and video detection, and that'll be complete shortly. School zone speed limits. For this project, we are reducing speed limits in qualifying school zones, and those requirements are based on state law. And for those streets that do qualify, we are reducing the speed limit to 15 miles per hour within streets that are 500 feet of the school, and then 25 miles per hour between 500 and 1,000 feet away from the school. This project has 3 phases. The first phase has already been complete, and those included streets around public elementary and middle schools. We are now working on phases 2 and 3 together, and those are streets around private elementary and middle schools and high schools. We just awarded the construction contract this month, and we hope to complete construction of the reduced speed limits in early spring. And on our webpage, which is shown on this slide, you can download this map and see where those new speed limit signs will be posted for phases 2 and 3. 19th Avenue Fashion Island Class 4 Bikeway. We are working with the San Mateo County Transportation Authority and Samtrans on this project, and we will be designing and constructing a Class 4 separated bike lane with smart corridor elements, which include benches with USB charging and Wi-Fi. The project team is identifying conceptual design alternatives and will present the project to the Commission and Council in the next few months. Hillsdale Boulevard traffic signal design. For this project, we are assessing and designing the traffic signal at the intersection of Hillsdale Boulevard and Alameda de las Pulgas, and we'll also be conducting a corridor analysis that will include the bike movements for existing and future bike facilities that connect to this corridor, as well as future pedestrian projects in the area. And we are currently developing the outreach strategy and analysis for the project and anticipate conducting outreach in the spring. And now I'll pass it to Sue Ellen to talk about our planning projects.
All right. Good evening, Chair Rowinski and Commissioners. Left-handed, not my best. The first planning project that we'll talk about is the citywide complete streets plan. City staff was at the commission in October 2023 with an update on this project. This is a comprehensive multimodal plan for the entirety of the city of San Mateo, looking at how to re-envision our existing roadways to make them safe and accessible for all modes in support of the upcoming General Plan 2040. Currently, as mentioned, we're here in the fall. We've done quite a bit of work since then, including completing phase 2 of community engagement. As part of that effort, we held several focus groups throughout the city, including with student families at a few of our elementary schools, at Baywood and at Sunnybury Elementary School. We held a focus group with students at Hillsdale High School, and then met with neighborhood residents in the Shoreview, Parkside, and North Shoreview neighborhoods for a small neighborhood focus group as well. So here we have a few photos of those engagement events. We had really good participation. It was great to be able to meet with families and students and other residents and really talk about the different issues throughout the city. So next steps for this plan include finalizing the high needs corridors that we spoke about in the fall with the commission, developing the draft plan and the accompanying design standards manual, and then implementing the phase 3 outreach strategy, which will be focused on the draft plan. That phase 3 outreach, which is the final phase of outreach, as we round the finish line on this project, is expected in early 2024. And what we're looking at in terms of phase 3 is holding workshops in various locations in the city to reach out to each district so that we are engaging with all of the districts throughout the city. Next up is the Complete Streets North Central Plan. So this is a focused transportation planning document for the North Central neighborhood. And this plan really focuses on understanding the lived experience in the North Central neighborhood and understanding the transportation needs and goals of the neighborhood. So to date, we've completed phase 1 of engagement, which included developing a lived experience group, which is comprised of a handful of individuals from the North Central neighborhood who are more engaged with the project team and providing more direct feedback, and also assisting the project team in setting up engagement events in the community. Our second meeting with the Lived Experience Group is going to be later this month, and we anticipate presenting this project to City Council in early 2024 for an introductory informational item. So as part of phase 1 with our lived experience group members, we really focused on events that engaged with the networks that they've already established in the communities. So this really broke down into some pop-up events and also focus group sort of events. So the pop-up events included a food distribution event, and also a hot chocolate and chat at the school bus stop in North Central. And then as part of the focus groups, we had some what we were calling house parties with North Central residents at one of the lived experience group members' homes, and also presented to the Home Association of North Central San Mateo and their members as well. So next steps for this project are developing phase 2 of community engagement, which will be this spring, and then going into phase 3, where we'll be developing the priority projects and recommendations. So this project, we're really leading with the community engagement To date, we haven't developed any recommended improvements or identified projects. We've been in the community listening and understanding what the needs are. All right, next up, Citywide Transportation Demand Management Ordinance, or TDM ordinance. We were also at the commission in November, I believe, with this project, presenting the introduction and overview. So this is a project that's funded through an MTC Technical Assistance Grant, and it's providing us an opportunity to take a comprehensive approach to transportation demand management and trip reduction throughout the city. So currently, we are working on developing the draft TDM ordinance and the accompanying program guidelines. And we plan to return to this commission, the Planning Commission, and City Council with drafts of those documents in spring 2024. Another planning project that our staff are working on is the Local Roadway Safety Plan, or LRSP. So this is a plan that's focused on identifying collision patterns in the city and recommending prioritized safety improvements at specific locations where there have been patterns of collisions and severe injury and fatality issues. This is a requirement to maintain eligibility for future Caltrans funding. So currently the draft plan is with staff being reviewed, and we anticipate that the plan will be brought to the commission next month for review and comment. All right, grant updates next. So the first grant update is for the Transportation Development Act, or TDA, Article 3, Bike and Pedestrian Program. So this is a grant program that's offered through City and County Association of Governments, or CCAG. Staff submitted a grant application to the current call for projects under this program for a few projects that were identified in the recently completed Transit-Oriented Development Pedestrian Access Plan, which also is funded under this grant program. So we funded the plan effort, and now we're hoping to fund implementation of some of those programs. So what we're looking at funding through this call for projects is access to the downtown Caltrain station from the north, which is currently lacking. So we've combined a few projects into this grant request to design a station entrance on the northeast side of the San Mateo Caltrain station to provide that access from the north, including North Downtown and North Central, and then improving pedestrian access to transit connecting to that new entrance. The second grant program that staff are currently preparing applications for is the Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Program. That grant program has a few different buckets of money, for lack of a better word. One is the Sustainable Communities Grant, which is currently funding our Complete Streets Plan and funds larger transportation planning efforts in jurisdictions. For the Sustainable Communities Grant, in this cycle, we're requesting funds to update the Downtown Area Plan, which was last updated in 2009. To develop a new downtown San Mateo area plan. And that plan will take the land use recommendations from the General Plan 2040 update and implement a plan in the downtown area for land use, housing, and transportation. So that will take a look at the existing circulation system and make recommendations for how to update the circulation system and how to implement circulation in a way that complements the land uses that are planned for the downtown. There are very robust initiatives contained in the draft general plan as focused on downtown in terms of being a vibrant center of the community. And this updated downtown area plan will align with the General Plan 2040 to enable us to implement that vision going into the future. So the staff recommendation for tonight's item is tied to this grant application to request consideration for the chair to sign a letter of support for staff to pursue this grant application on behalf of the commission. A second program under this grant program is the Climate Adaptation Planning Grant, and that's a source of funding that is available for transportation-related climate actions to develop climate adaptation plans, for example, which is what the city staff are looking to apply for the funding for under this program. So city staff are developing a second grant application under this program to develop a climate adaptation plan to assess the specific climate threats related to sea level rise in the city and to ultimately update the city's stormwater master plan. So again, the action requested from the commission this evening is to approve a letter of support to the California Department of Transportation for the Sustainable Communities Grant Program fiscal year 24-25 grant application, and to authorize the chair to sign the letter on behalf of the commission. And with that, that concludes the staff presentation, and Nikki and I are available for questions.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you, Sue Ellen. We'll start with a round of questions, and I'll start with Commissioner Segal. Michael.
Problem. That's a lot of work. Great job. That's a lot of projects to take in, and it's exciting to see the progress moving forward now that this is my second round getting to hear all these projects. I just had a very minor question I was curious about. For the speed project, you mentioned a construction contract, but there's no real construction in those speed reduction. It's just the signage, or is there actual construction?
There is some real construction of putting the signs up, and then I believe they're upgrading crosswalks as well as part of that project.
Oh, okay, thank you. That's it.
Commissioner Riddlemeyer.
Thank you for all of that information. That's a lot of projects. I do have some questions about, especially around schools. I know that you've done a lot of outreach to schools, and you listed some of the schools where you've had focus groups. But there are other schools that were not, I don't know if they weren't invited, or, I know that, there's only so many meetings you can have, but especially like, for instance, Baywood, there's a high school right next to it, and there's a middle school down the street. And both the middle school and the high school have had pedestrians and or bicycling students hit by cars in the last 2 years. And some very recently. Burrell Middle School had a student hit crossing the street, and Aragon had a bicyclist hit earlier this school year, and that was not nearly the first. So I'm just wondering, why was Baywood selected instead of the other two schools?
With regard to the Complete Streets Plan, we identified schools to coordinate with to set up focus groups just based on geography and trying to have representation from different areas of the city. So in terms of why Baywood was selected and not Burrell or Aragon, Baywood has a very active parent-teacher organization, and so we were able to go to their meeting and speak with the families there. So it was trying to get geographic representation, and it was also where there was an established group having a meeting. Those are more effective at getting feedback rather than the city setting up their own meeting at a school, for example. And for Sunnybrae, we were trying to get geographic representation as well. But that is just the work done with the schools for the Complete Streets Plan. We also have our Safe Routes to School coordinator who is liaising with all of the schools throughout the city. And we've also conducted specific school site evaluations at different schools, including Sunnybrae, Burrell, Hillsdale, Abbott. I'm missing some, but those are just this school year. So she's been reaching out to the administration and to the school district staff in order to set up those school site evaluations. So I just want to make sure it's clear that we're not solely reaching out to those schools. That's just the schools that were part of a focus group for one effort.
Okay. And it sounds like you're doing some good work on Alameda and Hillsdale, but across on the other side of Alameda, across 92, again closer to Aragon, I've heard a lot of residents complain about the intersection of Alameda and Barneson, where there's a dreadful four-way stop where 4 lanes of cars, four-way stop. And a lot of almost collisions there every day, especially as schools are getting out, because again, you have the 3 schools all converging on Alameda going to 92 and whatnot. And then also there's a crosswalk on Alameda and Hobart that I've heard from quite a few constituents who have wanted some action there. I'm just wondering if there's any plan for that.
Yeah, I can speak to Alameda and Barneson. That location has met the requirements for a traffic signal, and staff has scoped out that project and is requesting funding in this year's budget cycle to design and construct that project. So design 1 year and then construct in future years. With regard to Hobart, I would have to look into that and get back to you.
Okay, thank you. That's it for now.
Vice Chair Narita.
Thank you. Great presentation, as always. So when it comes to safety data, we've received a couple comments from the public about tracking bike collisions and near collisions. I was wondering if you could speak to that.
We're currently able to track collisions that are reported, so either through police or that are reported to various systems like Switters that track collision data. With regard to near misses, sometimes it's information that's told to us, but currently we don't have access to software or programming or video surveillance for near misses.
Is there a way to potentially plan in future years city budgets, or for instance, to somehow create a portal for residents to report near misses or something like that, to be able to collect that kind of data? We've been hearing this theme now for about a year.
I think if City Council were to identify that as an initiative for staff to undertake, we would be able to put together a work plan and funding request for that. But we may have to identify other projects or efforts that would need to be delayed in order to do that.
And then when it came to the Complete Streets project, I just wanted to confirm, has there been additional outreach between the October meeting that you guys gave us a briefing on and now, or has it been more internally facing staff work?
All of the focus groups with the student families and Hillsdale, et cetera, those have been in October and November.
Okay, thank you. And then when it came to the Sustainable Communities grant, are you requesting other letters of recommendation in addition to the one from the commission?
Yes, we have a similar request going to City Council next Tuesday, and then we request letters of support from entities that would be engaged in the effort. So we'll be reaching out to Caltrain, the Downtown Merchants Association, et cetera.
Okay, great. And then is that effort going to really focus, you said, on the circulation? So it's essentially like traffic and addressing traffic in downtown? Is that kind of the theme of that grant?
In part, it's going to address land use, housing, and transportation for the downtown area.
And when you say land use and housing, how does that interface? Because you guys are the transportation team. So then will it become a more comprehensive initiative where like planning commission will start to get involved, and you know what I mean? Like walk me through what exactly would that look like if we're successful in that grant?
Sure. I neglected to note that we're working on that grant application with our colleagues in the Community Development Department, the Planning Division. So that would be a joint effort between individuals in the Planning Division and in Public Works, because it is a joint land use and transportation plan. We had applied for funding under this grant previously for just a downtown circulation study. With the general plan being slated for adoption this year, we have the opportunity to expand on the downtown circulation plan to look at land use and housing, and have one plan that addresses all of those and really integrates three very crucial factors in developing a downtown so that we can develop the downtown in the future into what's been envisioned in the general plan.
Okay, great. And then, assuming we're successful in that, like, what are the kinds of projects that would then come to back to this commission?
That would depend on what's identified in the plan. We do have outstanding gaps in the bicycle network as it relates to the downtown, and so that plan would be instrumental in determining how to reestablish bicycle network connectivity in the downtown. So when bike projects or pedestrian-related projects were identified, those would likely come through the commission. We are currently drafting that grant application, but we are proposing to go to both commissions with updates throughout the process of developing the plan.
Okay, great. And then on the climate adaptation planning grant, is that like a exclusively transportation-oriented adaptation plan as transportation is affected by sea level rise and you know, climate change, or is it beyond just the beyond transportation initiatives?
It's inclusive of the result or implications of sea level rise on our transportation network, but it does go beyond as well.
And are there any other climate adaptation issues that affect our transportation network in addition to sea level rise?
I might have to think on that and get back to you at a later time.
Okay.
I would love for you to take that.
Very rarely do I stump Sue Ellen.
Good evening, Matt Fabry, Deputy Public Works Director. In conjunction with sea level rise, you do end up with problems with rising groundwater. So I think that that may be another challenge that we deal with our transportation network, especially in the areas east of 101. But with climate change, we also have more intense storm events. And as we saw with New Year's Eve and problems like with 42nd Avenue flooding and closing underpasses, that we've got problems with flooding roadways with more intense storms and more precipitation. So I think those would be the main things. I think, you know, if we get into significant heat events and things like that, that can have an impact on pavement as well. But I think the primary ones are going to be sea level rise, rising groundwater, and flooding issues.
Great, thank you. And then going back to the general comment from Allison about green paint and bike lanes, what's the decision to paint or not, to paint things green or not? What does that decision look like?
I will say that there have been changes in the industry related to design standards over the years, and so we do have bike facilities that are older that may not have been installed under the same design standards as we utilize right now. But for example, you'll see the green hash marks where there are expected to be conflicts between bikes and other modes of transportation. Every so often on the roadway, you'll have the green back to make it more clear that that is a bike facility. But we do typically just design those to the leading industry standards, which do change over time.
So is green paint like not an industry standard right now, or is it an industry?
Is.
Oh, okay, okay. So we are pro
so you'll see in
green
some,
paint.
Yes.
Right now.
Some of the photos that were in the presentation of recently installed bike facilities, you can see that really clearly.
And when we do let's take advantage of other paving, we have to do updates, right? Like I think there's like a Norfolk one you mentioned and another one. Would those then become green if they were like not green before?
The striping, for example, on that project, the striping on either side of the bike lane is white, but it would include the green striping.
Got it, okay. Let me see, let me just make sure. Okay, great. I think everything else is comments. Thank you.
Okay, I've got some questions here. I'm going to start with the traffic light at Hillsdale and the Alameda. And there was a mention of community outreach the spring of 2024. What are the plans for the outreach? And let me offer possibly, well, you know, I'll save some of that for my comment section. Let me ask you this question. Is the outreach going to be a 500-foot radius from the point where the traffic light is to be installed?
I'm not sure what the exact footage would be, but we will be outreaching to the full neighborhood and especially those households that are right along Alameda and along that intersection. And they will be hosting a community meeting. I believe they're proposing to have it at the Hillsdale Branch Library, where they'll educate the public about the project. They'll also ask for feedback about how the intersection is currently used so we can fold that into the analysis.
Okay, yeah, and I mentioned 500 feet. That is the standard distance used, for example, for small cell installation notifications and other, I'll say, public works related projects. And this is a public works, though not as extensive, but that's the standard. In my comment section, I'll provide some other outreach ideas for that part of the neighborhood. On the smooth streets, on the Sunny Brae Boulevard, that is the Delaware to Amplet, and the South Grant Street bike repaving. I saw in the notes that that will be the creation of dedicated bike lanes. Is that correct? For both of these projects?
For Sunny Brae, it'll be the Class 2 bike lanes are already constructed and already down. That's for Phase 3. And then for Phase 5B, it'll be Class 3 bike boulevard on South Grant Street. And at Norfolk Street, we are just updating the existing bike lanes that are already there.
Okay, all right. So there is, and the reason I ask this question is just to ensure that, is there a loss of on-street parking on any of these projects?
For bike boulevards, we typically don't need to remove parking because it's shared.
Right, it's shared real estate, for lack of a better term.
Correct.
All right, and I just wanted to bring that out, even though we all know about that sooner than later. Okay, great, thank you. Just a couple of more questions here, and I'm going to refer to Mike Spire's email that was sent to us this morning. In Mike's email, he asks, what is the status of the Hillsdale Bicycle and Pedestrian Bridge Project? And it's a timely question, particularly, following on the presentation that related to 2 grants we talked about tonight. And that particular project, that bridge project, wasn't included. Can someone explain why and what the future plans are for the bridge project?
Sure, I can speak to that.
Please.
Staff had previously scoped out a project for the Hillsdale bike ped overpass, which is a separated bike and pedestrian overcrossing for the Hillsdale and 101 area. The design that was identified was cost prohibitive, and we were not able to secure funding in order to construct the facility as designed. Since then, there have been modifications on the 101 freeway that may make that design infeasible in construction. So staff had scoped a feasibility study to look at options for the overcrossing, including revising the design that had been done, if the design could be utilized, if there was a different separated overcrossing that could be contemplated, or if the existing Hillsdale Boulevard overcrossing could be reutilized for more modes than currently utilize it. We had applied for grant funding through a federal grant program for the feasibility study, and we were not successful on that grant. We have continued to look for programs where we would be eligible. For example, the TDA Article 3 application is really, the funding is very centered on design and construction, not on feasibility and planning. So we opted to move forward a project that was ready for design and construction. But there is a federal grant program that the Hillsdale feasibility study may qualify for. So we do have a discussion set up with the grant program team to determine if it is feasible to go for that.
Right. And when you say the program team, is that That's internal here, or is it with, is it a federal grant program team?
It's with the federal entity that administers the grant.
Okay,
Yeah.
that would issue.
So we are continuing to seek funding for the feasibility study, but to date, we haven't found a viable option.
Right, and the current grants that were discussed tonight, the TDA Article 3 and the Caltrain Sustainability Transportation Planning Grant, if I got that correctly, those would not be appropriate for what the feasibility phase of the bridge project.
That project was not a good fit for those grant programs.
Right, so hopefully, and that might be an interesting update on the next quarterly, if you do talk with the federal grant team about this project and what the outcome would be. Okay, thank you on that. One last question, I'm going to once again refer back to Mike's email that he had sent off to the commission this morning regarding the 28th Avenue Gap Closure Project that you nicely reviewed for us tonight. In Mike's email, he mentions crossing the El Camino Real westbound is dangerous as cyclists don't have dedicated or protected space and must merge with auto traffic. Can someone respond to that?
Yeah, so the 28th Avenue Hillsdale Gap Closure Project does include the El Camino Real intersection, so we are looking at making improvements there for both bicyclists and pedestrians. So you'll see or hear more about that in the next item.
Okay, great, alrighty, good. And hopefully that addresses Mike's concern and also other cyclists and pedestrians as well. And then one last Mike also brings up around Nuevo School and Bay Meadows Park needs speed control. This area has has lots of kids, including youth playing in Little League. Can anyone speak to Mike's request or question regarding speed control on these two pieces of property, around these two pieces of property?
The areas, let's see, east of Kine Street, which is right where Nueva and kind of the Bay Meadows neighborhood is, that is outside the project scope, but we have noted that down and we'll keep that in mind for future projects in the pipeline.
Okay, so it's out of the current project scope that was discussed. All right, sure, Sue Ellen, please.
And if I may add on to that, if there are concerns about traffic calming in that area, residents are welcome to contact the Public Works Department to request that we look at those options.
Right. And if they were to contact the Public Works, would it be Nikki and yourself? Would you?
It could be either of us. Our contact information is on the agenda report or the main Public Works email address, which is publicworks@cityofsanmateo.org.
Right. And then just have it addressed to either Sue Ellen Atkinson and Nikki Chan. Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it. This will wrap up our first round of questions. Madam Chair, Madam Clerk, any speakers?
No.
No one phone, remote? We have no one here in person. Okay. Does anyone have any final questions before we go to motion?
Well, comments.
Oh, is there? Do we have a speaker?
Mike Swire.
Oh, Mike's on, okay. Okay, Mike, we're gonna need to call you on a phone number. So once we get you online, then we'll give you you'll have 3 minutes. And Cookie, Chair, can you put the timer up, please? Oh, actually, he's on phone. Okay. Hi, Mike. Just very briefly, we've got 3 minutes to speak here. I'll let you know when the 3 minutes is just about up. Okay, go right ahead.
There's no feedback, but thanks for all the hard work, Sue Ellen and Nikki and team, and to the commission for all their great work on bike and ped, and thanks to Chair Owinski for addressing a lot of my questions. I think that really helped. Let me just go over one or two things that I want a little more clarity on, if possible. On the first thing with the bike and pedestrian bridge, I understand what you said, Sue Ellen. Can you just be a little more specific as to whether or not the project would have been completed if not for the changes that happened on 101? And if so, was that due to the widening aspect or simply the express lane aspect of that? I'll keep going and then you can answer when I'm done, if that's okay. Second of all, my second question was on the 3 kids that were hit around November or so. What's the process for somebody going out, seeing what happened, making sure that there are not infrastructure improvements that are necessary? And I understand the police would go out if they are called, but similar to what happened on Franklin, to what degree have we looked at whether or not there's systemic problems there and done quick builds? And in general, what is the quick build process? We've talked about emailing you and staff, but is there a way in general when people have quick build ideas, how do we implement those as opposed to the long-term plans that you've been talking about, which are great, but they could take 5 years to ultimately get implemented, as well as costing a lot of money. And regarding 28, finally, yeah, I think the presentation was great. I understand now much better how to cross El Camino and the improvements in front of Nueva and between there and El Camino. There is a lot of speed, however, between there and towards 101. It's basically a cut through for people between Franklin and that area, and there's a lot of little kids crossing from the residential neighborhood on Bay Meadows. So I would say some speed bumps or chicanes. I don't know what the solution is, but something to traffic calm, especially given that we're making this a major bike thoroughfare all the way over. And then a couple more speed humps potentially on the west side of El Camino, just because they're a little sparse, but they do a decent job. So that's all I had. Thanks so much for everything, and keep up the good work. Bye.
Okay. All righty. Thank you, Mike. So Mike's asked some questions here. We're now, and is Mike the only speaker? Do we have any more speakers?
No more.
Okay. So we will pick up on Mike's questions. Before I do that, actually, let's start with Mike's questions, and then we'll do final rounds of questions here on the commission. So I have a few here: bridge, and the 3 incidences with kids, and anything else, Sue Ellen, you would like to address?
Sure. Oh, I didn't break it. That's good. For the Hillsdale Bike Ped overcrossing, regardless of the changes on 101, that project would not have been completed because we had not been successful in identifying construction funding to build the structure. It was extremely expensive as designed. Staff had applied for several grant funding options and were not successful at any of them. So until there were to be construction funding for that option, we would not have been able to complete that project. With regard to the students and recent collisions, the process following an incident is that the San Mateo Police Department conducts their investigation into what the specific circumstances were that led to an incident, and shares information related to any engineering improvements or any causes that they see related to an incident with our traffic engineering team and our team. And then the traffic engineering team and planning team can identify any improvements that may be feasible at that location, or any next steps to take. For example, we've reached out to the principal at North Shoreview Montessori to schedule a school site evaluation and circulation evaluation. And I believe that that's going to be scheduled for later this month. So we'll be able to observe the drop-off and potentially pick up circulation patterns and identify safety improvements if necessary.
Anything else on Mike's questions before I bring it back to the commission?
I don't think so at this
Okay, all righty. Okay, thank you, and thank you, Mike, if you're still on. Final questions from commissioners, comments? We'll do a round of final questions. Any final questions? Final questions? Nope.
Thank you. So the bike boulevards conversation reminded me, I think I ask this every year, but is there any data on how good and effective bike boulevards are, like in terms of making bicyclists feel confident, safety data, like are there less collisions with the bike signage, or actually are there more? Just like just generally in the nation, kind of data and understanding there.
I think that you'll find that data shows that the more separation that there is between a bicyclist and other modes of transportation, the safer they feel. And, in terms of local data analysis or analysis specific to bike boulevards, I'm not familiar with any offhand.
But bike boulevards don't separate, like, at all.
Correct.
Oh.
The intention for a bike boulevard is to reduce vehicle speeds and create a space where vehicles and bikes in a lower volume roadway can share space. We know that greater separation leads to a more safe bike facility, safe and comfortable bike facility. That's not feasible on all of our roadways. For lower volume roadways, we can implement a bike boulevard and create a space where motorists and bicyclists know that they are sharing that space. But with specific regard to data research analysis, I don't have that offhand.
So, okay, then, because my question is like, no signage, no nothing on the roads versus like welcoming of a bike boulevard, and we don't know that
I don't have any information offhand.
And then, is it green paint now for the bike boulevards? Is that like standard practice, or is it still just like white?
I believe our recent implementations have been white paint and green signs.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, please. Yep.
So in the places where there are bike boulevards, because I understand some streets, that's what you have to do because there's not room for a separated lane. I believe that there's now a state law, correct me if I'm wrong, that automobiles have to stay 3 feet from bicyclists. And I'm wondering if there's any signage or any way to inform drivers of that law.
That's correct. That's been in place for a few years, that motorists are required to give 3 feet when passing a cyclist. We don't currently have any signage throughout the city to that effect.
Okay. And another much newer law that just passed this year, or in October of last year, and in effect now, is that I believe it was AB 413, the daylighting law, where no cars can park 20 feet from a crosswalk, whether or not it's painted or not. So essentially 20 feet from an intersection, there's not supposed to be any car parking. And I know that to paint red citywide would take forever. Is there any way that we can have outreach and let drivers know that they're now not allowed? And is the police department ready to start ticketing if cars are parked where they're not supposed to be anymore? Because not parking there really does increase visibility for bicyclists and pedestrians at these intersections.
Understood. We do implement daylighting at intersections when we're doing projects. For existing locations, I can't speak to the police department's plans in terms of enforcement, but we can certainly look into that and follow up with you.
That would be great if you can look into that. And also more cross-departmental ideas are, especially this time of the year when it gets dark so early, a lot of people realize that our street lighting is not very good, and it's a real hindrance to biking or even walking at nighttime, after even like 4 o'clock or 4:30 in the afternoon. So I'm wondering, is there any way that you could work with other departments in the city to try to figure out where street lighting improvements would really help improve pedestrian and bicyclist safety as well?
While we're excellent at working interdepartmentally, we are lucky that street lighting is in the Public Works Department. And I know that our staff is looking at ways to be more proactive in terms of identifying where streetlights should be installed.
but we will pass along that feedback.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
I have no questions, I just have a comment. Does anybody have any comments? Okay. You have comments? Okay, we have a lot of comments. All right. Please. Yep, we'll start.
I don't have a lot, but I wanted to say it would be helpful to hear a follow-up on the collision data and to understand, a follow-up from the meetings with the school and if any potential solutions come out of it that we can think about up here. And in general, any collisions that occur with children or schools would be very useful to have follow-up to know what happened and how it can be prevented in the future.
Comments, Commissioner Riddlemeyer?
I just wanted to say thank you for the outreach you have been doing with neighborhood communities and North Central especially. I really like to hear that you're doing the house parties and also reaching out to a neighborhood association. Our neighborhood associations in the city are a very great resource, I think, for outreach. So I'm glad to hear that you're using that.
So I just want to echo Commissioner Michael's comment about children and collisions and safety. So I heard when Commissioner Riddlemeyer mentioned, asked about Argonne and Boral, and how, you took advantage of a really built up parent community to be able to solicit that feedback from the schools you did go to. I do think, though, that when there are collisions with children, it is incumbent upon the city to be incredibly proactive on these fronts. So I'll reinforce something I mentioned before, which is that there are lots of informal WhatsApp groups across different, classes and students and stuff, and you just have to find your lived experience experts at each school to, help facilitate and open up, pathways. If perhaps the PTA or whatever, association may not be as ready to engage as you are to engage with them, in the example you provided. And I think we just have to provide that additional care when kids are involved. Additional to that, I wanted to also echo, I think it's super clever, the engagement that you've done on the North Central plan, and what an evolution, in the last 2 years in terms of community engagement. So just thank you for that. I hope that it continues, and very eager to experience phase 2 and 3 and watch that. And I hope that this project will come back to the commission. I saw that there was a plan for it to go to city council, but I'll reinforce my request that it also at some point we actually get the substantive update at the commission as well. When it comes to the Sustainable Communities Grant, I would wholeheartedly support the chair signing a letter of support. The reason why I asked about, hey, what are the other letters of recommendation? Just because I feel like we have a lot to be proud of in San Mateo. Our downtown is a destination downtown. We have the only Michelin Bib Gourmand restaurant, in the peninsula. There's just fun, kind of stuff to brag about in San Mateo. And so, but I assume the downtown San Mateo, organization or someone will feature things like that, and how, in fact, on the weekends, it is crazy sauce in terms of traffic circulation accordingly, and we need all the help we can get. So happy to support the letter as written. Happy if you want to snazz it up a bit, defer to you given the fact that you have a whole suite of hopefully recommendations that you get. And that's it. Thank you.
Just very quickly on the traffic light on Hillsdale and Alameda. Since I live in the area, and I'm also a member of the Hillsdale Beardsford Neighborhood Association, that could be something, that would be a venue to speak, and I can help facilitate that for you. I think the Hillsdale Library, a meeting there would be very good, and once again, just check into the 500-foot radius from the light I think that's pretty standard. Regarding a comment that Commissioner Riddlemeyer brought up regarding enforcement of cars that park within, 20 feet of intersections and crosswalks? Is it intersections?
It's crosswalks whether or not they're painted, so it's
Right.
essentially an intersection.
Right.
This is where people might be crossing on.
Right. And here's why I bring it up. The city's got a fabulous service that does parking enforcement. It's called SurfGo. And I would call them. They are in charge of enforcing items like this. It helps if they're painted, but if they're not, I guess it can be enforced prior to painting. I don't know that. But they are very, very effective. I have found them, yeah.
They only work not 8 to 5 or something?
No. I would call them and get their hours, call the police and get the hours, but they are very effective. We use them in our neighborhood a lot. Okay, and I just wanted to mention that. Okay, everyone, we're going to wrap up with the motion, and that is, does the commission approve the January 10th letter found in the meeting packet tonight, as well as approve the chair to sign on behalf of the commission the letter that is addressed to the California Department of Transportation and will accompany the city's Sustainable Community Grant application. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Okay, second?
Sure, I'll second.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Riddlemeyer,
Yes.
Vice Chair Narita,
Yes.
Chair Rowinski,
Yes.
Commissioner Michael.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Okay, thank you. Okay, everyone, we're going to move to the last item. Oh, no, actually, it's not our last. Our next item on the agenda, which is under new business. And this item is the Hillsdale Cal Station Bicycle Access Gap Closure Project. This item is for informational purposes only and does not require a commission motion. We'll begin with a presentation from, I see Nikki and Susie. And then once again, we'll follow with questions for Susie and Nikki. Once those questions from the commission are completed, we'll go back to the public for some comment and then bring it back to the commission for final comments. But once again, no motion is requested. Staff, Nikki, the floor is yours.
Okay, hello again, Commission. I'm Nicolette Chan, Associate Transportation Planner and Project Manager for the project we're about to present. And with me, I have Susie Hufstadter, who is our Senior Transportation Planner from Fair & Piers, who is our project consultant helping us with this project. And we are presenting the Hillsdale Caltrain Station Bicycle Access Gap Closure Project. We will begin with an overview of the project and then introduce the 3 design alternatives. We'll then provide a summary of the outreach that's been conducted to date, and then we have some questions for commission that we'd like you guys to answer, and we'll end with next steps for the project. So we'll be requesting feedback from the commission, and we have these questions here for guidance. The 3 questions are, do the alternatives respond to transportation needs of the area and meet project goals? What parts from each alternative make walking, biking, and/or taking transit more comfortable on 28th Avenue and vice versa less comfortable? And what else would improve 28th Avenue that we may have missed? The goals and purpose of the project. So first and foremost, we do want to encourage active transportation and transit use through this project. And we also strive to provide safe connections connecting to the Hillsdale Caltrain station, but also for those traveling along 28th Avenue, which is an important east-west corridor for the city. The project strives to support all ages and abilities, which aligns with the adopted 2020 Bicycle Master Plan goals. And we will also be considering current and future travel demands to make sure we allocate enough space for all users, whether they're accessing the station or traveling by foot or by wheel. And this is also important because in the Caltrain 2040 business plan, they are proposing to increase service at this station. The history of the project. It began in December 2020 when we were awarded grant funding from the Transportation Authority Bike and Pedestrian Program. And at that time, the project was just one small block on 28th Avenue between Edison Street to El Camino Real. We then kicked off the project in November 2022, and flashing forward to February last year when we held our Stakeholder Advisory Committee meeting walking tour. For this meeting, we had staff from the fire department, police department, and representatives from Caltrain, Caltrans, and Samtrans present, and we walked the site and discussed opportunities and challenges we would have for this project. As we began developing the initial design alternatives, it led to us determining that we needed to extend the project scope further east to Kine Street, which is within the Bay Meadows neighborhood. And that allowed us to continue to improve the connection to the Caltrain station, but also gave us the opportunity to design a fully connected on-street bike facility from Edison to Kine that would connect to the existing bike boulevards that are at the extent of the project. And now I'll pass it over to Susie to talk about those existing and future bike facilities that will connect to the corridor.
Thanks, Nikki, and greetings, Commission. Thanks for having me. So this aerial just takes another closer look at the project extents. As Nikki mentioned, there's a bike boulevard existing on 28th Avenue to the east and west of this project area. So the focus here is really providing a lower stress and better connection in this busier area in between there where it's less appropriate to be sharing space with traffic. And importantly, this project will also intersect with multiple north-south bike corridors and will pay extra special attention to the intersections with those. So that includes Delaware Street, Kine, and then additional corridors that go north-south to the east and west. So it's really going to be important for us to be thinking about these intersection designs to complete the bicycle network in this area. So to just cover some more detail about the constraints that we're working within, as you know, and as everyone can see, there's a train overpass in this area, so there's a constraint of the existing curb to curb of the street, as well as the aerial structures in the median here. There is parking in some of the areas on this corridor, and so the designs do look at some changes to the parking configurations to provide lower stress bike facilities. There's a bus route in this area, and so the designs focus also on how to maintain that bus service and provide improvements to the bus stop amenities. And then, as we've already mentioned, thinking through how to connect with the full bicycle network in the area. So to dive into the alternatives, this is a lot of design thinking here, and the link to the full concepts were in your packet and they're online, so happy to kind of revisit these as we go if there's any questions afterward. But as we're looking at low-stress separated bikeway facilities, typically we look at two different alternative types. One is these directional bikeways, which are kind of with the flow of traffic and might be more intuitive for people who are accustomed to riding with the flow of traffic. And then alternative B that we'll look at in a moment looks at a more two-way trail-like facility on one side of the street. So that's really the big main difference between these. And as you can see in alternative A, there's buffered bike lanes in that first segment to the west, and then it transitions across El Camino into a separated bikeway under the train tracks. There are designated bus boarding islands, which means that the bikeway goes behind the bus stop, and that helps to reduce mixing between bike riders and the bus as it pulls over. And then transitioning further to the east across Delaware, the facility transitions back to a buffered bikeway alignment, and then we'll transition further to the east into the bike boulevard again. So alternative B, as I mentioned, is a bit different. There's all of the bike movement consolidated on the northern half of the street. What this does is create more of a trail-like environment, and it creates the situation where that bus-bike interaction is only happening on the north side. There are some different intersection considerations with a two-way bikeway like this. There need to be signal-separated turn movements so that helps to reduce potential conflicts if a driver might not be expecting a bike rider coming in the contraflow direction. So that's one important consideration, but there's also some benefits. This helps to create a potential passenger loading zone on the south side where there's currently a lot of demand for drivers to pull over and pick up and drop off Caltrain riders. And it also has all of the bike riders on the north side where there's an existing ramp up to the train station. So there are some trade-offs and differences, but that's kind of the main distinctions. One other piece to this two-way design is that there needs to be a little bit more thought again to the transition to the bike boulevards to the east and west, which are directional facilities with traffic, and so there do need to be special design and striping at those extents to help with that transition. And so alternative C looks very similar to alternative A, but there are some changes that are proposed in this one, especially at Delaware Street, to provide additional pedestrian priority. So it's not so easy to see in this type of concept, but the signal phasing would be different, and the kind of timing of crossing of pedestrians and bicyclists would be different at that intersection at Delaware to provide more pedestrian priority. So just to briefly go over the community engagement for this project, the engagement occurred essentially at two different venues. One was an in-person meeting on November 16th at the Hillsdale Library. There was good attendance with really big roll plots with all of these alternatives and an opportunity for community members to really discuss in detail the different alternatives with staff. And then additionally, there was a web page with the PDF of the alternatives online. It's still on there. And there was online inputs accepted from November 16th through December 1st. Wanted to also note that there were some sidewalk decals, flyers, and there were specific one-on-one outreach to staff people at Jaylee's food truck and at the 76 gas station, so trying to kind of target outreach to businesses in the project area. So just to cover some of the themes we heard in the engagement process, there were some questions as well. So one important question had to do with the passenger loading and unloading. There has been some observation of some sort of unsanctioned, or one could say illegal, unsanctioned stopping at the base of the Caltrain stairs, and some questions on whether there could be an opportunity to improve or formalize that. There were some questions about lighting and interest in seeing lighting improvements as part of the project. Additionally, there were some community questions about how to invest and upgrade some of the bicycle boulevard treatments along 28th Avenue to the east and west. And then there was a lot of really positive feedback about having dedicated bicycle space on El Camino Real crossing, specifically on that north leg, westbound, that we've heard about. So yeah, just to cover some of the kind of site-specific, this is a lot of thumbs up and thumbs down, so I'm not going to touch on every single one, but just to kind of give an overview, as I mentioned, that dedicated space in the different project segments where currently bike riders kind of have a bikeway and then they don't and then they do again. There's a preference to have some consistency through there. There were some positive feedback to having access to both of the ramps, directly from the directional bikeways, but there were also concerns about not being able to access the ramp. So that's kind of a pro-con there of not needing to cross, but then also having to carry your bike up the stairs. Some concerns about bus loading occurring in lane. This is kind of a pro for bus operations because they don't need to pull out and back, but it can also mean that there's concern about congestion while people wait behind the bus. And then there are some questions or concerns about the various bicycle transitions kind of at those intersections and back and forth between the different types of facilities here. And for the two-way bikeway option, again, people were into the idea of an all-way stop control at Edison. There was a really positive feedback about having that passenger loading on the south side. There was some concern about the intersection design. As I mentioned earlier, sometimes there's a concern that it's not intuitive to have contraflow bikeways, and it can be sometimes difficult to explain to the public the type of signal design that will happen there, because sometimes the turn prohibitions and dedicated left and right arrows that are needed to manage those conflicts can be new to people or unusual for drivers to see that. And then again, as I mentioned, transitioning from those two-way facilities to one-way facilities, east and west, is a concern for some folks. And this one, because it's so similar to option A, I'm not going to go through each one, but there was positive feedback about the idea of having pedestrian priority at Delaware Street. So just to walk through next steps here, tonight we'll hear from you on the design alternatives and hear questions. And so we'll take that feedback along with the community input and the technical analysis and recommend a preferred alternative. And from there, we'll initiate the design phase and then come back with some more detailed design at a future meeting. So here I'll pass back to Nikki for the questions and discussion.
Great, thank you, Susie. And now that we're all familiar with the project and the alternatives, we have the questions for commission back up here on the slides, and I'll run over them really quickly. Again, do the alternatives respond to transportation needs of the area and meet project goals? What parts from each alternative make walking, biking, and or taking transit more comfortable on 28th and also less comfortable? And what else would improve 28th Avenue that we may have missed? And that concludes staff's presentation. Myself and Susie, as well as Sue Ellen Atkinson, who is our principal transportation planner, are available to answer any questions you may have for this project.
We'll open up with questions, but I'm just curious before we do that. Madam Chair, Madam Clerk, do we have is there anybody online right now? Who wants to? I'm just curious if we have any speakers.
No hands raised.
Okay, no hands raised. All righty. Why don't I start with Commissioner Riddlemeyer?
Thank you for that presentation. I have to say I do occasionally bike to Hillsdale to take Caltrain into the city. And so I really appreciate this project, and I like your range of alternatives. I think it's really, I mean, it's a little difficult to see from these diagrams, the nuances of the different alternatives here. But I think my overarching comment is, kind of arcing back to what Allison McQueen pointed to earlier in a call. Visibility and accessibility. Bicyclists are going to be able to adapt to whatever you put there as long as it's visible to them and they can see the green paint and they know and they can see ahead and know where to go. And also that there is a very smooth transition from one area to the next. So I think whichever alternative you choose, whichever design you do end up going for, as long as it's visible to the bicyclist and easy for them to make the transition, I think those are the two key things. Personally, I'm really interested in the different directions right next to each other, but I know that there's been some pushback in Burlingame where they've done that on California, so probably some good lessons learned there that I'm sure you're aware of. But I have seen in some cities where it's worked well, but it does take time for people to get used to that. But I wouldn't say, don't pursue that one if it seems like it makes the most sense. Thank you. That's it.
Okay. Vice Chair Narita.
Thanks. So, first of all, hi, Susie. Nice to see you again. And I genuinely did not understand the difference between alternative A and C. Could we actually slow down and do that a little bit more slowly? Sorry, I really didn't get it, the difference. I think that I saw some hash marks, so there was some crossings, but other than that, so there's crossing things here right? Where a bike would have to go from street to the sidewalk. This is my Caltrain stop, so I know it very intimately. Like, they would have to cross after El Camino, they would cross from street into sidewalk. Is that, then that's at, and the bike lane would become the sidewalk part, which exists right now? Is that what that's saying?
No, so
Okay.
in all three alternatives, the bikeway is additional to the existing shared use path on the north side. 'Cause a lot of the community feedback has been that that pathway feels just like a sidewalk and it's kind of
Oh,
crowded.
it's totally
and there isn't really
confusing.
space for people to use. So all three alternatives have a bikeway that uses the existing street space and is separate from that.
Okay.
So the difference between A and C is primarily at the Delaware intersection. If you see, what's easiest to see in this very like planning level concept is that the bikeway mixes between the through lane and the right turn lane at Delaware in option A. And because of the way that the signal timing is different in option C, that allows the bikeway to stay curbside because there's a separate phase for bikes and there's a separate phase for peds. So
And the light will actually do that? Like, the light will tell you bikes can go, cars can't go?
yeah, there would be like, the signal design has not been fully, I mean, we would do a full signal design on the preferred alternative, but the idea is that there would either be a signal phase that's shared for bike and ped or separate bike and ped signal phases where all the vehicles are held at that time.
Oh, like the scramble thing?
It depends on whether, it could be a scramble or it could be all ped phase where the diagonal is not actually formalized. It's all these different nuances about like the feet per second of the crossing time. So I'm not gonna make like very specific promises about what the phasing will be, but the idea is that there's an opportunity with an all red for cars to provide a different type of dedicated phase for the active users.
And that's the C. That's alternative C. So alternative A assumes no, or like standard business as usual light signals?
It's essentially that bikes and peds will go on the green that's parallel
Can I
to
just
them.
interrupt? Yeah, can you use a pointer?
Yes.
So we can, and I'd like you to start, because this is really important. I'm sorry, I'm going to restart Vice Chair Narita's question, because I think that would not only help, you're looking at it, so you know what you're talking about, but I'm kind of, and I want to keep up. So let's restart. Yeah, great, thank you.
So on 28th, between Delaware and Kine. Oh, hey, there's a red, that's a cool red dot. There we go.
So I'm gonna try to do this without turning my back to you. So this is alternative A, and in alternative A, the signal phasing concept, it's not designed out fully, would basically have green through movements for all users. There's still some protected left phases, like the left arrow, but if there's a through movement for cars, the bikes are also going through, the peds are also crossing the street. And so what this can mean is that there are sometimes right-turning vehicles going at the same time as peds. There are sometimes mixing happening with bikes and peds, and it's the same in all directions. And then if we go to alternative C, it's not so easy to see just with striping because what the difference is really a signal timing difference. But the idea is that there would be a sign that says no right on red. And so when the vehicles are held in all directions, then peds would all be able to go at the same time. There's an opportunity to potentially have a bike-only phase. There are some changes to state law about whether the bikes and the peds can go at the same time. You know, if there's a true scramble and the bike is seen as a vehicle, that's technically a conflict. And so even though the user would potentially not view it as a dangerous situation to have a few bikes crossing ped path, you know, we have to be diligent about this, the CV, the vehicle code. So in any case, the idea here is that there's an all red phase for vehicles, and then the peds would all go, and then separately the bikes would go. And so this may have some impact on the vehicle operations, but it would provide this moment where there's no cars turning anywhere and peds would cross. So that's the primary difference, is this Delaware Street intersection.
Okay, thank you.
And that's all kind of to say that there's a lot more detail to the signal design that would happen at final design, but that's the general idea.
Okay, thank you. And so I'm familiar with, I think, the alternative A design, because I think Foster City on Hillsdale does, in Foster City on Hillsdale, when you get to Shell, they do this where it's like hashy, and then there's like the right turn lane, right? And so I get that. Is there an example of alternative C somewhere in our city already, or would this be first of kind?
I don't believe we have this sort of signal phasing in the city currently right now.
Okay, cool. Similar stuff has happened, for instance, I think in like Santa Monica, but, and then alternative B, are there examples similarly of alternative B in our city yet? Or is the closest example what Commissioner Riddlemeyer was saying in Burlingame in California?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so we've never done it before in San Mateo?
Nope, this would be the first.
Okay. And then in terms of, so we're talking about bikes, which is great, love bikes. PED is super important in this area. Nueva school kids, there's dozens and dozens who use this Caltrain stop because I have literally seen them today when I went to work. So what outreach, if any, have been done for Nueva students? Were they involved in providing feedback on the designs?
So this project does stem from the Transit-Oriented Development Pedestrian Access Plan, and as part of that plan, we actually had a pop-up table right outside of Nueva School, and we caught them right when they were walking out of school to Caltrain. So that's where the outreach came from, and that where this project came from. So they were involved in that outreach as part of the plan. For this outreach at the community meeting, we specifically reached out to the school and let them know we're having that community meeting, but we did not see any attendees from Nueva School attend the meeting.
Okay. And then lastly, for this gap closure project, is it, just to super clarify, it's exclusively about what goes on the street? So when the community gave feedback on, hey, we would love lighting improvements or something else, is that out of scope for technically this project, but could be considered for future projects?
That's correct. So yeah, this project is mainly focused on bikes and pedestrians. So some of the comments we have received from that outreach from the Nueva students are in the TODPAP plan, TOD, Pedestrian Oriented Access Plan, that are out of scope for this project.
Great. And then there's a lot of like folks who like kind of play Frogger and like will cross the streets to try to get to the stairs or to the ramp accordingly. And so I was curious, has there been any conversations about like traffic calming measures in this area, or is it exclusively about paint on the ground to figure out this bike lane design stuff?
So on a wider roadway like this, the lane reduction that we're proposing, so it's essentially
it's like a road diet.
A road diet, you might say, yeah. So reducing the travel lanes in each direction. This is extremely effective for traffic calming and pedestrian safety because it makes it so that there isn't like a second car behind the first one yielding. We're not looking at a mid-block crosswalk as part of this project, but the road diet itself is the most effective traffic calming measure on a multi-lane roadway like this.
Okay, cool. So this would get rid, and I'm sorry, I forget now, but this, if essentially to make these changes happen, like lane, it would become single lane in each direction right now, essentially? Is that
correct? Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Sorry. I'm sure this is obviously I don't have a design brain. Okay, great. Those are all my questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Michael.
Thank you. Did you get a sense from your community outreach if a certain alternative sort of came to the top, was preferred?
So at the community meeting, we were actually not asking them which alternative do they prefer, because there is opportunity for some segments to be mix and matched. So one example of that, if we go back to alternative A, you can see that at the Edison and 28th Avenue intersection, that transition from the Class 4 bike lane to the bicycle boulevard is at the intersection. And then at alternative C, the transition is actually mid-block. So that's one area where at the meeting we were asking our attendees, do you feel comfortable transitioning at the intersection or mid-block? Because that's one area that, say if we went with alternative A and if we got feedback that more people were comfortable at the mid-block crossing, we could transition that out. So looking at these designs, there is opportunity to do mixing and matching. So we were trying to have people go through each alternative and give feedback on each segment rather than just choosing one that they like specifically.
Was there any sense of between the one-way versus two-way? I guess A and C versus B, right?
I think there was surprise at the two-way because, as we've mentioned, it's pretty unfamiliar. Most people have not experienced that or seen that at all. And I think they came in thinking they would like alternative A and C better, but the more they looked at B, they kind of saw how intuitive it is to just go straight. It's hard to say which alternative got the most likes because we weren't looking at it that way.
Can you scroll back to alternative A? So the hash marks not at the intersection. Wait, so I guess before I ask that, when I look at A, are all the bike lanes separated, or is that at street level? Because I just see hash marks versus looks like a raised sidewalk.
For all of the alternatives, the bike lane is on the street.
On the street, and then what's separated between the bike and the cars? Is there any separation? Physical separation?
Yeah, so the basic assumption is that in the middle section between Delaware and El Camino that it is physically separated. The concept is still very conceptual, so the exact material and design is kind of to be determined in final design, but the goal and the purpose of the project is to have that be physically separated in that section. Some of the areas where we're showing a buffered bike lane.
Can you use, Susie, can you use your pointer?
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
So in this entire area, oh boy, I'm over here, right? This entire area is physically separated, and then further out where we're showing this buffered bike lane, there could be an opportunity to physically separate, but right now the goal is to kind of pick the preferred alignment and then drill down on some detail about whether it's possible to physically separate in those areas as well.
And what does the hash marks mean where it's not an intersection? Like the green, where it's not a solid line, but not an intersection?
Here. Yeah, so this
and
is...
on the other segment?
Yeah, I guess this might be a good opportunity to clarify the use of green a little bit because there was a question earlier. In this exhibit, we're showing the entire bike lane green kind of so that it pops out and is legible on the screen. The actual striping would probably have the green paint primarily around these intersection areas. So when you see the dashed line, that's where the vehicle would merge across the bike lane to get into the right turn lane. And then these ones across the intersection are kind of like calling the attention to the alignment of the bikeway, but these diagonal ones are a mixing zone essentially.
So in the diagonal one, bikes will be merging and then cars will be merging the other way.
Yeah, that's a mixing zone. But again, the intersection design that keeps the bike lane curbside, like we talked about at Delaware, that's kind of what Nikki's talking about with mix and match. There are ways to use signal design to keep the bike at the curb rather than mixing, but it involves more traffic impactful changes to the signal in order to make that safe and reduce conflict.
And then can you go to alternative B? So this one appears, for lack of better words, the cleanest or smoothest. Is that really how it would be in function if I'm out there with a bike?
I mean, so it kind of depends on your perspective. Some people really prefer to ride with the direction of traffic and have this like very clear feeling that riding with the flow of traffic is preferred. And some people prefer to just be on the side that's closest to Caltrain and have the least mixing possible and don't like to have to check over their shoulder and be in the lane or cross the path of a car at all. It's a just completely different style of bicycle riding. I think we're in the industry kind of like moving in the direction of reducing that mixing. But if you polled a bunch of people who currently bike today and are comfortable biking today, you may have a mixed bag there. From a design perspective, as I've mentioned at El Camino in Delaware, the signals would need to have a lot of dedicated right. You have to protect the right turn. And so we're accustomed to seeing a left turn red and green arrow because a protected left is common, a dedicated left. There would be additionally a dedicated right, which we sometimes see, but it's not as common. So it's, I think, pretty intuitive, but it depends on who you ask. So yeah, it's kind of a matter of perspective, but from a design perspective, it does use a little bit less space, and it could be a clean way to do it, although the signal design doesn't look quite as clean, I guess, is a short way of putting it.
No, that's helpful. And then alternative C, that one also, I mean, just, on a really basic level, looks a little smoother than alternative A. Can you just highlight the reasons why?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a signal design question. What we don't see in the like bird's eye view is that the
Susie, if you can use your pointer.
Oh, okay. Yep. Like gesturing. Yeah, so the big difference is kind of what we were just talking about of that all red phase. And so there could be potential impacts to vehicle operation that doesn't really show up in the striping, but that's the kind of trade-off there.
But there's no need for a transition for a vehicle to merge and a bike to merge across the same.
Yeah, and the reason is that we're not offering a right turn, like a free right turn for the vehicles. So that's that like right turn on red is the part that is the trade-off, and yeah, that's kind of the difference.
I think that's really helpful. Thanks for going through that. I'm blanking on my last question. But I agree that the nuances are sort of hard to figure out, until you're out there with a bike. Oh yeah, I did want to say, I do highly recommend, if you haven't, talking to Burlingame and seeing, even though it's new, so a lot of like the feedback is probably just because people aren't used to it, just to get like some lessons learned, I think would be really helpful, just in knowing what to think about. But just in the feeling of how this looks, I would lean towards B or C.
We can make those recommendations. Yep. This is just questions on this. So we'll have a chance. Before I take up my questions, does anybody else have any other questions they would like to? Sure. Vice Chair Narita. Yep.
Looking to the future as we, plan for other bike paths, the corollary to my prior question, are there opportunities to potentially replicate B or C, the signal vibe of C and the two-wayness vibe of B in other places in our city in the bike master plan, or are we just like in a super unique case study here, given, the street width and stuff like that?
I'll defer that question to Sue Ellen.
If you could, I'm not sure that I understand.
So is there so I asked, is this going to be first of kind? Either
Right.
if we picked a B or C, will this be first of kind? And the answer was yes. So now my corollary question is, well, are there opportunities to potentially replicate B or C when it comes to signal design and C, or the two-way on one side vibe of B in future bike ped projects? Like I'm thinking Alameda, for instance, right? Like it's huge, lots of potential. Like, is that an opportunity to potentially replicate, similar designs?
Got it. Thank you. I think that, as we're moving into design of our bike facilities in the bike master plan and in other plans that we're doing, we are working on identifying options that are, moving us forward and that are innovative and that utilize the right of way that we have in the most efficient manner. So I think that regardless of what design is selected for this roadway for each facility that we're implementing. We've got Class 4 proposed on Delaware right nearby. Saratoga, Alameda is a great project coming up with Class 2 bike lanes. I think that every project we're learning as we implement, we're learning from other jurisdictions, and we do make an effort to implement things that are as innovative and as are context sensitive as we can, so that we're identifying the best design for each location. So it's not necessarily a copy paste, but we're trying to do what makes the most sense for each project.
Please, Commissioner Riddlemeyer. Yep.
To follow up, I'm wondering about the cost of this project, because this is, it seems like it has taken a lot of planning and a lot of funding. And is something like this going to be replicable somewhere else in the city, or is it just going to be financially infeasible?
For each bike facility that we're implementing, we need to do design. Some are more straightforward than others. For this particular location, we had alternatives that were different and that that provided us an option to get community feedback on. We have made a commitment to engage with the community on implementation of bike facilities, and so that does inherently make the design cost more, because community engagement is purely people hours, and people hours are, they do cost money. This project, however, in terms of design, is not vastly more expensive than others, I would say. But the approach would likely be similar on other larger projects like this.
So I have a question on outreach. I don't recall receiving an invitation. Who was contacted on this project? What was your strategy?
We had multiple sources for outreaching. So in addition to the sidewalk decals and flyers that were posted along the route, we also sent out mailers around the neighborhood, and as well as in both Hillsdale and the Bay Meadows neighborhood, and then we contacted these schools in the area as well.
Okay. Yeah, I live within very, very close to Hillsdale Branch Library, and I don't recall receiving an invitation. Though I think did we speak about this meeting at the last quarterly update? Does anybody remember?
We did introduce the project at the last update.
Yeah, no, yeah. Because if I had known about it, I would have attended, but.
I think at the time, we didn't have the meeting details ready, but we knew we were having a community meeting.
Yeah. Something I'm going to recommend here, I'm going to save it for comments. I'll save it for comments in terms of how to get better input from the commission. More effective, I'm going to say more effective, and I'll put that on the comments section. So let me share with you, I also take Caltrain when I have to go to San Francisco to work, and I park in the lot that is, as you're heading east on 28th, you go into the tracks, and then you make a right into the parking lot. However, I will share with you, cars park underneath the Caltrains, both, by the way, both the east and westbound. They park underneath Caltrans because that's where the stairs are at, and it backs up traffic, and will ultimately also interfere with the bike lanes, be it whether on the north or south or whatever side of the street they're on. And so I just want to mention that will need to be managed, and it's big. It is a big issue because I do drive and I go down 28th and I make that right after the Caltrain. So I'm heading east, but right after the Caltrain tracks into that very long, slender parking lot. But that's something I would put on there, just as an addition. And I see the M-bus loading doesn't interfere with the bike lanes. Maybe we have something like similar for people dropping off cars dropping off people right at those stairwells. That's just a thought. Let's see. I heard you say there's really not one alternative that really stood out with the public.
Just to clarify, we weren't asking
Yeah, I
for
understand
the
that.
public
Yeah,
to
but
pick
I'm
one.
sure
Yeah.
in speaking with people, they might have gravitated towards one or the other, but nothing, huh? Yeah. Okay. I don't have very many questions on this, partly because a lot of them have already been answered, but I did want to bring up the cars dropping off people at the stairwells of the Caltrain overpass. Which one has the least mixing, would you say?
I think they each have mixing in different places. The two-way cycle track has the least in the project area and signals. So
Yeah.
within that middle,
Yeah, yep.
within this middle section, but then this transition out to the bike boulevards on each end has a little bit more of a kind of unusual crossing dynamic. And then option C would then have less mixing than A because the signal design is got these like dedicated right turns. But again, the intersection designs are not final, and so there's a lot that can be done with any of them to
Right.
reduce mixing at intersections. And the question of alignment of two-way or one-way, signal design and intersection design can reduce them to nothing, or it can have complete mixing. It just has different impacts on
And here's
traffic.
why I ask, since I do, this is the road I go down when I take Caltrans, is I think if I was to look at this, I would have the least amount of mixing, just my thought, just my observation, between the El Camino and Delaware. There's just a lot of movement, pedestrians, buses, cars, bikes. So, and I don't know what design meets that. Maybe it's still evolving, but that would be something where I would put the least amount of mixing so everything is moving as seamlessly as possible. If you put in a design, here's my final question, if you put in a design or one of the alternatives or mixes of the alternatives, what flexibility, if anything, can you change? And maybe that's too abstract of a question at this point in time, but maybe something to think about. These are complex, by the way, because we have so many different modalities of transportation. And buses picking up, cars picking up and dropping off. So,
Yeah, do you mean what can you change after it's constructed?
yeah, is there? And maybe that's more of a comment than a question.
Yeah, I mean, I can answer in a kind of general way.
Sure.
Is that there are ways to make projects more temporary or pilot-like, using more different materials that are less digging and pouring concrete, and by doing less major signal upgrades. But there's a major trade-off in that it's less durable, less attractive, and sometimes less safe depending on the situation. So the preference is to try to figure it out ahead of time, but if there are places where it's like, for whatever reason, there's a desire to have flexibility, there are different types of construction methods that can allow for
I guess it's a
changes.
tough question without knowing what.
Through the chair, if I
Sure.
could follow up on that. There are options, and particularly where the class 4 would be implemented between Edison and El Camino, where different materials, et cetera, could be more temporary. However, throughout the majority of the area, we'd be reducing the number of lanes on street, modifying the striping, et cetera. That's not as feasible to do in a temporary way.
Right.
And so I think that if there is a desire for flexibility, we can consider that, but realistically, I think that we do need to make our decision as we move forward in the design to select our preferred alternative.
Okay. Anyway, some built-in flexibility would be good because you're going to find things that you don't anticipate. For example, cars dropping off, which I'm going to suggest needs to be added, whatever alternative you do, whether you prohibit cars from dropping off because it does really back up. And sometimes you'll have 2 or 3 cars backed up east way and west way. Okay. Sure, please.
You alluded to the parking lots being maybe redesigned. Was that accurate or no? Okay.
No, there won't be any changes to the parking lots as part of this project.
Oh, okay. Okay. So they will just stay as like the near. Okay, great.
But through the chair, if I could follow up on the parking lots, there is established loading for passengers and for shuttles in the parking lots that are off of 28th Avenue. So to the chair's point, we have all noticed that there are vehicles that are queuing on 28th in order to load passengers, but that is not the action that we're seeking to solidify there. Really, they're not loading where they're supposed to be in actuality. So what we want to do is encourage the use of the loading area that's been designed, like there's a kiss and ride that's been built in the south parking lot. We want to encourage use of that and not design the on-street facilities to encourage the behavior that we don't want to see.
And Susie, in your experience, right now there are 2 lanes, which create a bit of an excuse, right? Of like, I can take up a lane because people could go around me. But in your experience, when there's a road diet and it becomes a single lane, are people less of a, problem and do poor actions when they know it's like they're going to hold up traffic?
Yes. I think that the caveat is that if there is truly curb demand, it needs to be accommodated. So as Sue Ellen mentioned, there is a kiss and ride. So the desire is to have people stop there. The alternative B, which has curb space potential to add in, that's one option, is to manage the demand in that way, but it's not necessarily like the most high priority given that there is a kiss and ride. In some areas with road diets where there's like a business district and there is not like loading zones, things like that, that can be a little tricky because if there's truly need, then people will stop where they stop, especially like Amazon trucks, but to be real, but like there's an existing place for people to go, and so signage could help a lot.
Great. And then in all 3 of these alternatives, or in all of these designs, we're separating bikes from ped, right? So those problems currently experienced will dissipate completely, regardless of alternative design.
Sorry. Yes, we are separating bikes and peds, but the class 1 on the north side of 28th Avenue is still remaining. So if bikes do prefer to go on the sidewalk to take the class 1 instead of using the on-street bike facility, they can still do that.
Oh, wait. Sorry, that was not clear. So
You want to put a pointer on it?
yeah, so the sidewalk on the ramp side, right now we have a beautiful wide sidewalk on the ramp side of this Caltrain station. And so we are going to keep that as a dotted line that would allow bikes?
Right now, we haven't proposed any changes to the striping on the sidewalk on the north side.
For any of the alternatives?
For any of the alternatives.
What was the community feedback on that?
I would have to look back at the comments. I don't recall there being an issue there. I know they do also share the feedback that it does feel pretty narrow, but we are hoping that most people will use the on-street facility instead.
Okay, because none of the designs have bikes on the sidewalk in your little icon stuff. So that is not clear right now, correct?
It isn't very clear at this high level. It's pretty hard to see, but we do have a very faint striped line on the north side of the street.
I thought that was the bike lane, though. I thought that's the two-way bike lane.
No, so the bike lane is on the street, and that's the green stripe that runs along. And then the sidewalk is the white area next to it.
Okay. I visually don't see it, but okay, I trust you. I trust you, it's there. Okay, I'll save the rest for comments.
Okay, any more questions? Nope. There's no speakers? Okay.
No, there is Aaron.
Oh, Aaron, okay. Okay. Please, Aaron, yep, come on up. And do we have a timer for Aaron? Or, Aaron, you have 3 minutes. I'd like to put a timer up so you can help pace yourself. Okay, Cookie, do you have to turn it on? Oh, okay. Okay, Aaron, please.
Hello and good evening, Commission. My name is Aaron, and I live at the corner of Edison and 28th Avenue. My partner and I use this facility to access Hillsdale Station, where I travel northbound and she travels southbound virtually every day. So I would like to split my comment into 3 parts. First, to discuss the parallel facility in Burlingame. I take the train to Burlingame, and then I bicycle home. When I bicycle home, sometimes I will use the now alternative B-like facility on California Avenue. I would like to comment that in this particular situation, that kind of facility works great because you are abutted against the Caltrain tracks and parking lots. You do not face any intersections against you when you're traveling in the contraflow direction. This facility would not work this way in this condition because you would face contraflow intersections at both El Camino and Delaware, meaning that you would have cars turning right into you in the counterintuitive direction. Now, by day, this would be relatively fine because they can see you and everything goes as per expected. But at night, I think this would be a particular disaster because if you're traveling even with a light, a driver making a right turn might not see you. And particularly if sometimes they might not see the sign telling them they can't turn right on red anymore either. They will see the cycle approaching them, look back and forth, say, okay, that car is in a way that is in a no conflict into my movement. They will then make a movement and then hit the bicycle that they did not think was on their right-hand side. This, again, is not an issue with the Burlingame path because it faces no intersections in the contraflow direction. So, second part. I'm going to, perhaps this is a little bit of a controversial way of thinking about it, but as for with the re-signaling at the corner of Delaware and 28th for the scramble versus the traditional aspects, my personal opinion, and I say this without a background as a traffic engineer or in the law, is that at that intersection, if you were to just continue the cycles as they are in the current design, and then have boxes for making left and right, for making corresponding left turns for the bicycles, you would be able to mitigate making any other changes and be able to retain full isolation of the bikeway between cycles and cars. And I think that this is good, I think, because even though you can't freely make left turns as a bicycle anymore, you would get all of the safety impacts of not having that conflict zone and not having that mixing zone, sorry. But also retain the ability to, if you feel like it, join the vehicle lane and make a left turn as a vehicle if it's at a low traffic condition. And then my third point would be, and I recognize I have 15 seconds left, is that we should really consider that crossing, in between the mid-block crossing in between the staircase and the ramp, as part of the project scope. If only because I've seen so many pedestrians just fly across without looking one way or the other. It feels like that's an accident that's waiting to happen.
Right.
Thank you.
I would agree, yeah. Okay, thank you, Aaron. I actually thought you were our IT person. Right? I guess you stepped in, but thanks a bunch for your comments and your help earlier. Okay, do we want to open up with some comments and some recommendations? I might open up here. I have to share with you, this is a very complex, you're asking us a very complex question. And like I said, I must have maybe missed the mailer in November, but I don't know if I'm prepared to make a recommendation. Frankly, I regret And I think for something this complex, what might have, and I thought Sue Ellen did a great job on the 19th Avenue overpass, is had invited a lot of people down to the overpass. We can walk through and see with our eyes and talk about some of the challenges and ask questions. So I'm going to defer my recommendation, I'm sorry, and maybe recommend that you, Aaron and the Silicon Valley Bike Group, were they at all contacted? Maybe some of our local folks, were they?
Yes, we did have a representative at the stakeholder advisory walking tour from SVBC.
Okay, so they got a walking tour. Okay. It would have been great, I think, to have the commissioners on the walking tour. Okay, so I'm going to defer, I regret. Okay, thank you. Commissioner Riddlemeyer.
Yeah, likewise, I mean, I would like to see something happen soon, so I don't want to delay this, but I don't feel qualified to be able to make a recommendation on, well, one of the alternatives or other alternatives that aren't on here without having a tour and knowing what these alternatives. I could have gone down today but now I understand better your alternatives and would not have been able to do that on my own. So I think, yeah, I too didn't see the announcement come through on my networks. So I would really appreciate more outreach to us also in the future.
Yep. Commissioner Michael? Okay, nothing to add? No comments and recommendations on alternatives?
I could reiterate what I said earlier.
Yep, this would be the
Okay,
time to do it. Yeah.
sure. Based on the information shared tonight, I would lean towards B and C because of less mixing between vehicles, but, you know, it was hard for me to visualize the commenter's comment, but it would be, I don't know how those, I realize that is not supportive of B, but as an actual user, it would be interesting to, you know, take that into consideration. And if there's any other outreach planned, you know, trying to get a little bit stronger opinions from people who are there every day using this of what their preferred alternative would be.
And Vice Chair Noguera.
Yeah, so by my count, there were 9 people at the community meeting. There were 4 additional comments online, and then you also have your stakeholder engagement committee. Is that accurate in terms of the amount of engagement that has happened so far?
Yep, that's correct.
I don't think we should be making a design recommendation based upon 13 people's inputs and then 1 stakeholder advisory committee necessarily, when we have such an amazing opportunity if we get a little creative. Like, why don't we have someone ride the Caltrain in the bike car and ask people and solicit feedback in the bike train of the people who are there, living this more regularly day to day? The engagement here seems a little more traditional, and we just had a wonderful example of all this innovative community engagement done on North Central and on the complete streets. That's some amazing engagement, and this one felt very like standard kind of traditional engagement that I just don't the stickers, I hear you, and I don't ever use them, and I'm on the commission, right? So 13 people plus stakeholder advisory committee just makes me really nervous because this is a highly used station with dozens of bicyclists a day using it, and I think we can do a little better and get a little bit more feedback, like the valuable public comments that I didn't even think about, which was about nighttime conditions, right? Riding conditions and how that could impact on alternative B. So I just wanted to better understand, is there space to do a little bit more, or are we up against some kind of shot clock or something that would preclude those types of innovations and community engagement?
Through the chair, understanding the feedback, this is, while we acknowledge this is a very important corridor to get to Caltrain, it is a focused area in which the project is going to be implemented. To Commissioner Riddlemeyer's question about can this be, done similarly throughout the city, we do need to consider that people power that it takes in order to do the community engagement. The more the larger efforts that we're doing for community engagement are tied to neighborhood plans or citywide plans. So just thinking about the scope of the project and having the outreach be commensurate with the scope of the project is really important. In terms of the ability to do additional community engagement for this project, we've had the stakeholder advisory group. We have the community engagement, which we are continuing to do because we do feel that there are members of the community that we have not heard from yet. But we are limited in terms of budget and in terms of timeline, given that this is grant funded, and we're not able to request additional budget in order to do more more community outreach under the grant. So I would just, understanding the feedback, appreciating the feedback, really want to focus on making sure that the outreach is commensurate with the project and that we are doing things that we can replicate in the future and that we're not setting ourselves up for expectations that are outside of what we can deliver in the future as well.
Absolutely, and I don't want a repetition of what happened with North Central, right? And that community engagement was like even better on that bike lane in terms of the level of engagement, in terms of the number of residents who were involved and had voice in that. And this one makes me a little concerned. I just don't want us to have to then go back and try to cure something in terms of design. And so I just don't think 13 perspectives is enough, like beyond the stakeholder advisory group, having done this stuff, for a while in my own career.
Through the chair, could I also add something else? When we were developing the community meeting, before we even decided we were going to have a meeting, we did debate on having a pop-up event instead, like you said, so we can get engagement from the people that are actually using the bike lane as they're using it. But in deciding to do the meeting, the reason for that was because the information we were showing required more time with people, and when we do a pop-up event, usually people don't have the amount of time to discuss the amount of information that we showed you tonight. And it would be challenging to have the rollouts in outdoor conditions. So we did consider doing a pop-up at the time, but a community meeting met our needs more with what information we're trying to get from the community.
I totally agree. I totally understand and agree that perspective, which is why I was like, why not like a ride along? Because you have a captive audience for 30 minutes. But like I still think like politically it's going to be pretty tough, right, to base a design like this on 13 people plus a stakeholder engagement committee or stakeholder advisory committee, and that's just, unfortunately, the data at hand. I completely understand it met your needs, but our role here on the commission is also to think about, is it going to meet the users' needs and the residents' needs? And we don't have enough. It seems pretty unanimous that we don't have quite enough data to really make that kind of informed recommendation necessarily. So, because prior to hearing public comment from our 14th engaged person, I was like, oh, B sounds really cool. But now I'm like, that's a great point that the public comment made on nighttime, and I don't know how to necessarily, weigh that compared to A and C. But I will say broadly, but general thoughts on this. This neighborhood is incredibly innovative, right? We have tech companies, we have a pottery-like location, we have the Nueva School, so I think we should push for innovative design as a theme. I don't think we actually should necessarily just go with alternative A because people are used to it, when we have to build for the future and we need to start normalizing other designs that do not prioritize cars. That is like actually a behavior change that we as a society need to make in our next, 25 years of existence, let's say. And this is the neighborhood to do it and start it in. So I would love to see some innovative design, whether it's B or C, depending on what the current users think and how you weigh all of that. But I do think that this is the place to do it first, is this location. People have self-selected to be in a transit-oriented development neighborhood. Like, if we can't do something innovative here, we will fail, like as a general, broader, sense of the word. So let's be innovative. Let's figure out the signal thing. Let's figure out how to do the two-way street, the two-way, bike thing, whichever one. But let's do something cool and innovative here and set the expectation accordingly. I don't like the sidewalk having this like alternative bike thing happening. I think that'll cause like a whole bunch of confusion. And if you're not going to talk to Nueva school kids, or go to the school about that, I would just be really curious. And the last thing we need is like a San Mateo Journal article saying kids get hit by bikes on the sidewalk, even though we have this beautiful, innovative, bike design thing happening. So I'm not sure the calculus there in terms of maintaining that, striping on the sidewalk. Why don't we just make it all PEDs? I'm not really clear on that, and I hadn't heard a good case tonight. But those in general are my comments, barring, misgivings on the stakeholder engagement process.
Okay. Final, okay, please.
Just real quick, I definitely support the idea of thinking innovatively here and not car-centric, prioritizing the bike and the ped. And if the signal causes more delays for cars, I think that that's very fitting to do here.
Okay, I'm going to close out this agenda item. And thank you, Susie, Nikki, Sue Ellen, for hanging in there. And we're going to, so this agenda item is concluded. We're just going to go to our final agenda item for tonight, which is reports, announcements, and meetings of interest. Does anyone have anything they would like to share? Stormwater outcome?
Yeah, I guess we could share that. The stormwater fee proposal was passed by the community, so just over 51%. So that's good news for us. So we have some additional funding to take care of the many needs that are here in the community regarding storm drain, stormwater facilities. So we're beginning to plan around that and what that means and how we're going to attack that. But we won't see funding until probably mid next year. It'll go on the tax rolls for November. So stay tuned on that. I just want to encourage you. I know this was a lot tonight on these designs and so forth, and I know we provided some links to those designs for you, but any time if you want to go over anything like that in advance of the meeting, just reach out to any staff here in Public Works. Next meeting, we'll have the local road safety plan on the agenda, and that's, I think, all we have for now. And I just appreciate you all being willing to take up some of your day to meet with us on some training regarding the small cell effort.
Okay, anybody have anything else to add? No? Sure.
I wanted to ask about the small cell. It was intense for a few.
Okay, you know what, if that's related to the training, maybe after we're done with the meeting, yeah, let's do that, yeah. So everyone, we'll wrap up tonight's meeting. Our next commission meeting is Wednesday, February 14th, once again starting at 7 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned. And good night to everyone. Once again, thank you, Nikki, Erin, Sue Ellen, for hanging in there really late. Appreciate it.